who qualified in Frankfurt.
But sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, even the closest of friends don't want to spend 27 years together.
Well, if you mix with such a crowd that we mixed with, you wouldn't feel the length of time so much.
Are you really saying 27 years doesn't seem a long time to you?
No, from the point of view of the years, if you add them, it was a long time. But we became a happy crowd, especially because our group were in single cells, and you get an opportunity which you did not get outside to sit down and think. It is only when I was in jail that I discovered that sitting down to think is an important part of your political program.
It makes you sound like a monk.
No. But to look back on the period that we have covered and to see the mistakes that you committed, sometimes when you are convinced that you did not behave like a human being, people who befriended you when you arrived in Johannesburg, when you knew nobody, when you were poor, once you became a lawyer and some measure of attention was focused on you, you forgot them.
You became arrogant.
Yes, you forgot them, and I became very shy to think of that. But I became shy because I had an opportunity to sit down and think.
Now, I can see in 27 years you might learn that wisdom, but when you first went to jail, surely you felt something different, didn't you? You didn't immediately feel, now I have a chance to think.
Well, the fight between ourselves and the warders took place as we landed on the island, because there were 4 of us, and I walked behind, and 2 were in front. I was behind with Tefu, an old member of the Communist Party. Then they wanted us to walk, they wanted to humiliate us. And when they said we should move, they say hak, which they say to cattle.
To drive the cattle along.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we then started. They stopped us. Said, look, this is not Pretoria. This is Robben Island. You must carry out our instructions. So I say to Tefu, the former member of the Communist Party, let's go in front. We went in front. And we walked even slower. They stopped us. We said, you're wasting your time. This is how we're going to move.
So you were stubborn, really, from the start?
It's not a stubbornness, you see. It's a question of fighting the idea to humiliate us. We had to fight that. Otherwise, we cooperated with the authorities.
You weren't a patient man, were you? You were a headstrong man. So how did you work out how to do this?
Well, as a young man, it is true, as a young and inexperienced person, I was headstrong. But being in jail put a different character to one, precisely because you had the opportunity to sit down and think and to plan your future. And you realize, by the way, let me tell you, that when I was now practicing as an attorney, I changed most of my approach towards the rulers of the country, because we had the past system. If a person did not stay in a place for 15 years or failed to work for one employer for 10 years, even if he failed for a month, he could be chased out.
Yes.
Now, a chap would come to you. You knew that you couldn't do anything, but I would go to the top officer in the post office and say to him, I'm approaching you as a Christian. This man has stayed here for 14 years. He has got a house, he has a wife, he has got children at school. You are sending him to a place where he has never been. Because they would ask him, where were you born?
And they'd let him...
And the man says, I was born in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
What about your father? Where was your father born? He was born in Vryburg. Within 72 hours, he must go back to Vryburg.
Are you saying you had respect for that ruling Afrikaner class because of being a lawyer?
No. When people help you in difficulties, you have no alternative but to respect them.
Right.
And I found that the Afrikaners, their attitude was not homogeneous. Some of them, although they acted as part of a bigger group and did what policy demanded they should do, but in their individual capacity, they did exactly the opposite. Because that officer, for example, you go to say, look, I'm coming to you as a Christian. Here is a man who's being sent to a place where he has never been. And he says, bring me the papers. He phones, bring me the papers, and cancels that endorsement and gives a fellow permission to look for work. So now you must be grateful towards people like that.
In prison, because I'm really wanting to talk today about the prison more than before, were you ever scared?
Scared?
Yes.
Well, this is sometimes a question of philosophy. I was scared many times. The day we arrived in prison, 2 officers came. And they were coming in order to give us what is called a carry-on, in order to ill-treat us, to beat us. So the captain says to one of us, why is your hair so long? Like this boy's, pointing at me. So I said, look here, I couldn't finish. He then rushed towards me. I was frightened, I was trembling, but I pretended as if I was brave. And I said, you touch me, I will take you to the highest court in the land. By the time I finish with you, you will be as poor as a church mouse. He stopped. But I was frightened as he was rushing towards me. But we have a duty which sometimes makes you more brave than you are. And this is the bluff I made. And that frightened him. And of course, when you have been frightened and somebody notices and withdraws, then you become even more arrogant. And from that moment, I was arrogant. But I was covering my fear. I was afraid. But those moments happen many a time in prison. But you see, intimidation, there was a great deal of it. But it also depends on how you behave. If you fight right from the first day and send out the message that I am my own master, I am captain of my soul, that is the impression that you're going to give. And your enemies are going to be influenced by that attitude.
You were never hit, were you?
No.
Why not? They hit everybody else. They hit all the youngsters who came in.
No, I know. You see, I was never hit myself. But there were things which were more painful than a physical blow. They beat up a chap, and he was sullen. And I took him to the head of the prison. I say, I've come to lodge a complaint. He was beaten by what was so-and-so. The officer took down notes, and I left. 4 or 5 days thereafter, they called me back. You came here and complained that somebody was hit. Who was it? So I said, but you know very well. I brought him to you. You took down notes. He says, no. Was it so-and-so? I said, I can't remember his name. He then called. The chap was in another room. And this fellow came forward. Now the soiling had disappeared. Mandela says you were hit by water. No, my boss, I was never hit. But why must he say you were hit? He says he's telling lies. Now, that was very painful for me to take somebody with marks that he was assaulted. Then he comes up and he says, no, I was never assaulted. Do you know what they did? They used to give us one dish of mealies with beans. So they decided to give this chap 2 dishes. That was enough to bribe him.
Why did
Those things, I had so many experiences of that nature.
But why did they never beat you up? Why did they never physically assault you? Did they see you as somebody set apart, as a kind of leader from the start that they had to look after in a way?
I was a lawyer outside and everybody knew. I fought discrimination outside. As a prisoner, I was visited by top officials, locally and from overseas. Cabinet ministers used to visit me.
Not at the start?
Huh?
Not at the start?
No. Cabinet ministers visited me right from the start. Kruger, one of the most notorious, visited me before I finished the year.
Did you ever think they might try and kill you in jail?
Well, there was that, as you know. There was a plan to kill me. I only read it after I had come out. There was a plan. The plan was that they are going to get somebody to say, you must escape. And we have facilities for you to escape. But when I land on the island, because I was escaping from justice, they would shoot and kill me.
But did you in jail think that you might be poisoned, shot, that they would do something to wipe you out? Or was it not a fear for you?
No. That was never my fear. My fear was purely a plan to kill me by pretending that I was running away from prison. That was my fear. And I turned down a lot of offers to that effect. And some of them made my fellow prisoners quite genuine. You know, Eddie Daniels,
yes,
a member of the Liberal Party, was thinking of those plans. That, look, you are needed outside. He was genuine, he was my best friend. He is still my best friend. But I feared that although he himself was genuine, if we tried, there's radar around the island. And if, for example, they send a helicopter to pick me up, it will immediately be caught.
That was Nelson Mandela talking about his prison years.